I'm Filipo. I work on misinformation, and this is a result of a need for understanding how users actually interact with misinformation on social media, because there is not just growth, but evolution in directions of misinformation, and anything that it's thought of not the top level quality information. It's hard to predict and hard to moderate on social media. So we wanted to know how people actually think about fun. Yeah, so there, as I said, there are multiple models that of information that can qualify as something that we quote unquote don't like. It could be fake, something that it has something that's fabricated inside, humor, or it's hard to verify. It could be a mistake, could be something that has been unintentionally reported in a wrong way or in a wrong context, or something has been blundered. And these two are not just new, but in the past, the newspapers and media issued errata, but that's kind of hard to happen nowadays. And that's because there is a difference in that kind of velocity of data. Then we have dimension where we calculate, and then we have disinformation campaigns where actually try to pivot between these two and disseminate narratives that fit a particular agenda with intention. So on the human side, I have broken down in 4 P's that usually lead to two P's here. So why users fall for misinformation? So there's a predisposition for our cognitive processes to be drawn to misinformation. Of course, in the past, we liked rumors, and we liked gossip, and we liked yellow pages, but this is something different. And the switch between those two things, it's not necessarily known to many people, so people usually fall for it because of the types of attractiveness, also because of perception, right? 1,000 times told a lie becomes a truth, and that's actually a tested phenomena that happens on social media. It doesn't help that people are polarized, so those two effects fit into the 3rd P, where actually polarization, it's more seen as defending lines and defending your own team against someone else who tries to defame you. And then in terms of promulgation, social media kind of had a very much laissez-faire approach into how they moderated it. Facebook started roughly 10 years ago. Twitter didn't do anything, other platforms not even mentioned to do about misinformation. So misinformation came to it, and then social media figured out, oh, we have to do something about it. It's just like adding the S on HTTP. So, but in a context of false narrative. So all of that created the other 2 P's, which are panic and pandemonium. And what that panic and pandemonium created an effort to, let's say, what we're going to do, let's tame this misinformation. What we're going to do first we're going to try to pre-bump, which meaning that preemptively we want to try to provide credible information that can discredit potential future spins. If that doesn't work, then we're going to debunk. We see that something is a problem, and then we see that someone actually is doubling down on climate change, for example, narratives that we want to try to find to debunk it. If that doesn't work, then we try to detect it and remove it up front, so not many people are exposed, but people find a way to put it back. And then if that actually is seen and perceived as too much of intrusion by the platforms, of course, in the United States, that's there's a questionable thing of whether something is free speech, whether something is not. So then there is a middle ground of moderating where platforms say, okay, we don't say this is true or not, but we think that this might be a problem. So you should consider checking the facts about X, Y, and Z. So where we arrive, what we know how people usually react and how people are susceptible to misinformation. What we see how platforms actually shape the playing ground and dissemination of narratives. But what we really don't know is how actually people step back and what they think of this. So naturally, we'll all think that everyone will agree that misinformation is just falsehood. but that baseline, it's falsehood itself. So we started thinking through the analogies, because in the past, and for example, the local comprehension of security concepts led to people to investigate in our community about how people conceptualize passwords and authentication and VPNs and so on. What of that can be used to design systems that have to be secure. And at the same premise, in the same parallel, we wanted to see what we can do for misinformation, so social media platforms and anyone else interested can create different interaction and engagement types, so people can fall less or fall more, or actually cannot create that much of a problem. So we use the knowledge from previous studies on folk models, and folk models means mental representations that are not necessarily true, but nonetheless are employed and shared between different types of cultures. We also, that was one of the dimensions that we looked up as a basis. Another dimension that we look up as a basis was how people actually model interactions on social media, because social media is something that we present ourselves, and our integrity and dignity is on the line. On top of that, people don't forget on social media, so we are very much concerned what we're going to say and how many permanent records for that they will be, and how that will shape what people will think about. So based on these two dimensions, we tried to figure it out where misinformation fills in and where misinformation is same or different when people approach as a phenomenon and people interact with it online. So we assembled quite a large sample of 235 participants. That there's a distribution fairly lean towards young people. Obviously, recruitment is limited by nature. So, but we try to recruit through different types of ways, and snowballing and interviewing and MTurk and people who can recommend someone. So we try to have fairly balanced set. We first did a pilot study, then we did a survey, and then after the survey, we asked if people want to give their email so we can actually get an interview with them, see if they maintain what they said, and if they want to add something that can add context to what they have previously reported. Am I boring you? So we found out that there are 5 dominant conceptualizations of misinformation. The predominant one, and we did not report numbers for purposes of the fact that this may change and grow, and people grow with folk models, right? They change it. They think first of someone, and they change how they interact. So the first one was, and the predominant was, it's that misinformation is conceptualized as political counter-recommendation. So that means that it's not necessarily entirely falsehoods, but it's selective picking of falsehoods that fit a political narrative. So for me, for example, that's why I put notables and quotables. These are quotations from our participants, where when we probe them to ask them, like, but what do you think about whether this is a falsehood or not? And their predominant explanation was that whatever the other side, quote unquote, says, for me is misinformation, and I see it with a very much different, very skeptic eyes, and I will never receive it on the face value. I made it bold, the other side, because you'll see in the paper, people did not hold back naming the other side with very derogatory and disrespectful terms, which is something that actually is on the agenda of disinformation firms. They really want to make you hate someone else internally. And that's why it's one of the interesting findings that shows that probably those disinformation campaigns so far have worked and achieved some kind of objective to create a palpable other side in these wars. So this goes into the context of what's the purpose. The purpose is to create division, and is to to how people interact with it, how do they respond. Many people ignore, many people don't even follow, and many people just try to stay within what they like. So whether that's echo chambers, whether that's echo beliefs, we go in detail in the paper, but we don't take sides. We just want to report they say how people actually have a concept and how they react. The second one is an out-of-context narrative. So in this one, there are a particular group of people who maintain the first one, and the other ones in the later, but this one is also the one where people thought of out of context, where stuff is taken out of context for the purpose of creating a lot of noise. So it starts, I will give examples as I go. For example, chemtrails, I don't know if you're aware of that. And then QAnon is a big example of that. It starts with, it has some tangential relationship with anything political, but you can take QAnon and then make it happen in every country. So it's not necessarily directly related to the United States. So everything that is taken out of context and created a spin around it, it was also thought of out of context narratives. And there was, of course, someone who does this for political gain, but there's also people who are actually bored and doing this for some other reason of just polluting the discourse online. So many people, when we asked about the out of context narratives, many people pointed to the fact that it's enough content for platforms to drive engagement, and that drives money. So we separated this as a separate model because it had a distinct component of distinct financial and economical model, and it's not necessarily just for political purposes. A third one is the one that we all think that everyone would have agreed. So that's the baseline, but this comes as third, and people, of course, obviously they dismissed a lot of stuff as lies, something that it's fabricated, and something that it's not necessarily good at, and something that someone could very easily verify that it's fallacious, wrong, and fabricated. There was some division between who disseminates this, how it's happened. A lot of blaming to media outlets. In our pilot study, people started drifting towards blaming Fox News, MSNBC, all that. We tried to keep. That's why in the second study and the third, we tried to keep them away from it. So just that because that could give a different confounding factor of this, but it's a good size of the sample agreed that this is actually true, and a lot of the stuff is fabricated on social media. A lot of people agreed that this is external propaganda, as we talked, as disinformation, and we separated this one from the others as there were many people who particularly pointed to Cold War style of interference and to any kind of attempt to create content that could undermine whatever they perceived as patriotic United States position. So this is a United States study, so that's one of the limitations. But we put it in a propaganda model because they particularly pointed to outfits that create a narrative that has a propaganda flavor. And the last one that we found with entertainment, which boils back down to the very essence at the beginning of fake news and trolling and memes, as 4chan, they started on 4chan because trolling was making jokes and memes and some kind of off-kilter comments by the anons. So Anonymous started this, and then many people noted that they use this still as try to entertain themselves online without even have to engage with it. Whether that's, we after probing and after thinking about it, that entertainment could spin into a problem. Right? Memes could create even problems. Many people noted that that's the case. They're aware of it, but nonetheless, they use it. Many people said that they read stuff and they go and privately just laugh about it and use it as very much a social social pitch among their friends. So those are the 5 models. There are much more details in the paper. We also ask people, how do they actually decide what's misinformation or not? So they use dual model, of course, analytical model, and they use heuristics, right? So you see some very, very fun, interesting quotations that drive the point home. And people were aware to understand whether there are some kind of basement fallacies, but they also understood that they're also quite good now into looking into usernames and accounts and understanding, okay, this is not something that I should trust at the beginning. We have found traces of every of the models of security that to a certain extent maybe resemble, but it should be developed further. So people do think that misinformation can cause physical trouble. There are criminals involved into it, that disinformation still is information warfare, and it falls under information warfare doctrine, which the United States has one, so other countries probably do too. It falls under market model because people mentioned that you can buy, like, there's disinformation for hire, and also it's misinformation was thought as a bad or buggy platformware. There were, of course, characterizations of who are the ones that spread misinformation. This also again falls into that previous categorizations of bad or malicious or actors that operate in any domain, and now they moved to this new, particularly fun and a lot of, again, noisy domain. This is the last slide, which I wanted to end up on. This is both interesting to understand how to moderate content, but it's also interesting to see where are people in terms of misinformation, because a lot of work takes a static definition of what this is and then works towards down there. And then you see a lot of people getting off Twitter or getting on Getter or getting on Gab precisely because they perceive that someone else does not understand what they really need. So thank you.
My quick question is, do you have any sense for how your analysis would compare to misinformation studies that I assume have been done in the past and for that precedes social media, like in the sense that misinformation has been around for a long time, right?
Yeah.
And so are there interesting aspects of your study that specifically relate to the social media aspect of things rather than general things like propaganda and entertainment and so forth that we've seen for decades?
We don't cover about that, but I personally and privately am interested into that. So I've looked into it, and now I'm writing a piece on how it compares in terms of actually CIE triad and past interference, how platforms interfered with. So the newspapers were once the ones that disseminated it, then television, Noam Chomsky, and then now social media. So yeah, thanks. But the first misinformation that affected elections was that Zinoviev letter to the Communist Party of Great Britain in 1924 that actually tipped the elections for the Conservatives instead of the Labour Party. So historically, it's almost exactly 100 years, actually.
Wow.